Hello everyone and welcome to Heart Not Life Sailing. Today, while we're still in Trinidad, I've decided to take a look at our chain plates, and I don't really like what I see, so I'm going to do a more thorough inspection. I removed one of our covers here, and this isn't the chain plate, this is a backing plate, and there's lots of surface rust on the backing plate, and this is like a grounding plate. But the chain plate behind it just looks like it has stains that had dripped off from this grounding plate. If I look at the metal up here, it's all still pretty clean, but the weak point is always up here, right where the chain plate comes through the deck. On the top of ours, the cap is welded on, so there's no way to remove the cap and inspect inside of it. So what I've got to do now is actually remove this chain plate. I can clean up these grounding plates and the backing plate. I can just clean them up and inspect them for any kind of cracks, which is, I think, unlikely. This basically is like a big washer. I'm gonna replace all the bolts. I don't think they're worth keeping, even though they're fairly clean except for one nut, but safety is my concern here. All of these are connected to a heavy gauge wire. This basically makes like a shroud of grounding all the way around the boat, so if you ever get struck by lightning, you're encased in it. It doesn't come through the boat. It goes around the boat to the water. So I'm just gonna continue on here. I just took the cover off and the nuts off, and I'm gonna remove these bolts, get this pulled up through. I loosened the shroud from above. This is our main shroud, so this one's goes to the top of the mast. The one on this side and this side, they just go up to the spreaders, so halfway up the mast. Only doing one at a time, so I don't have to worry about supporting the mast. It's still held up by two shrouds. So let's get started here. Alright, so this is the condition of my bolts. You can see why I want to replace them. Sure, there's lots of metal there, but there is a lot of surface corrosion, and that could possibly be inside of it, and it's just not worth the risk for a bolt that's only worth a few dollars. Both of these chain plates now are backing plates, and grounding plate is loose. The whole chain plate now, you can see, is loose. Just a bit of adhesive and a little slotted screw on the top. So I'm gonna go and remove those and pull it out. I don't know what, if any, good these little screws do holding this plate down, possibly just for when they weld it to keep it in place. I think I might need to take that pin right out. This isn't exactly the right wrench for the job, but it'll get it done. There we go. In theory, this should just slide out now. Alright, so this is the chain plate, and despite it being dirty, it's looking pretty good. I definitely don't want to polish it up right now. I'm just going to wipe down this grime, and I'm going to look it over very carefully and see if I see any kind of fractures. It's looking pretty good. Still got some grime on here. Definitely don't want to polish it until I've really inspected it. I think I'm just going to use a bit of acetone to clean up whatever this gunky stuff is. Not rust, it's something else. It doesn't feel like rust, it feels like something stuck on there. I think that's just some old sealant. I need something soft to scrape that off with. It comes off with my nail, but not a rag. Here, I'll use a little washer. Got it somewhat scraped off. I'm going to use this jeweler's loop I have, which, by the way, is very handy having one of these on a boat when you got to see things up close. The markings have long worn off. I've had this for so long. So it definitely helps to be in sunlight to do this. These don't work well in low lit areas, so it's a nice sunny day. I've looked over like where I'm mostly worried about it, where this comes to the deck, and I mean that is the cleanest part of it. It's still like a mirror here. Well, I'm doing this whole trailing and leading edge of it. Either side is the bolts, looking for any kind of fracture or something that doesn't just look like a simple little scratch, because it'll be a dark line with like rust inside of it or markings, not shiny inside of the line. And so far it's looking pretty good. I'm pretty satisfied. I've looked above here and around, and it looks, I mean, it just looks like it got dirty from those grounding plates and backing plates. So I'm pretty satisfied. I'm gonna look into what I can use now to polish this up, and we'll get right back to you. Took the backing plate out to get a good look at it, and what I can see now is that this backing plate needs to be replaced. That's not a bend in it, that is the metal has broken. It's cracked. It cracked almost under its own weight. So it's a good thing that I got to this. I'm hoping that this one's in better shape. This was just a grounding plate on the front of the chain plate, but this is the backing plate. It's basically like a large washer. Nonetheless, I believe it has to still be in one piece, so that's going to cause some major delays here, because now I have to get a fabricator to cut me one of these. I brought my bench grinder down here, just set it up underneath the boat. I'm going to clean up this grounding plate and then see if this is still in decent shape, because these two plates were definitely worse than the chain plate. Take a while. On that grounding plate, I found a small fracture in it. I'll show that to you when I get back upstairs. I didn't see it until I cleaned it, which kind of goes against what I was told about chain plates. Don't polish it up because you won't see the fractures, but I didn't see that fracture at all until I polished it up. It was just a stain on there. When I polished it up, it was apparent that there was a crack in it. I don't know why that would crack. I'm gonna have to talk to some people here, fabricators, and see if that can either be repaired or get a quote on getting that redone. So I've looked over the chain plate pretty thoroughly before cleaning it. So now I'm gonna clean this up and I'm gonna inspect that again. I don't know at all if this is showing up on camera. I'm going to try my best here to show you that crack. It's very apparent on the edge here. This one I'm not sure about. I'm going to get an opinion here, possibly go to the rigger and ask them, because this is just a grounding plate. This has to be replaced. This basically cracked by me setting it down. This clearly was made out of an inferior metal, because it is rusted all over, and that was up against the chain plate that doesn't really have any rust on it. It cleaned up well. I'm going to look this over with a loop again right now, and I don't expect to see anything. I don't see anything with my bare eyes. Okay, so while I'm waiting for a fabricator to come here to take a look at these backing plates, I'm going to start removing the other side. I have 3 holding this up on either side, so I'm going to take them out kind of alternating, not directly beside each other. But I took a center one out there, so now I'm going to take an aft one here. That way the mast is always being well supported. First step I'm doing, I'm gonna get this tube out of the way. So I just throw a vice grip on here. I like to mark with electrical tape exactly where these turnbuckles were, so when I'm putting it back together, I can put it back pretty much exactly where it was. You don't need to do a whole tuning of the rigging. Put that nice and tight up against the metal or up against the threads. The same on the bottom. Spraying a little corrosion block in the threads here. Alright, it's nice and loose. Now we're going to go down below and remove the covers for this. Okay, inside the boat now. This is the starboard aft shroud. This is inside of a cabinet. Now there was a built-in cabinet here when we bought the boat, and the wood was quite rotten. So obviously it had a leak, which makes me worry more about this chain plate than any others. The backing plate there, you can already see there is some surface rust on it. This cabinet was very built in, so it appears that has never been changed, which I find hard to believe in a boat so old that that's never been changed. But this cabinet was very much built in. There was no way to remove it unless you removed all of these cabinets to access it. So I just tore off the last little piece of bad wood that was attached here, and the bolts continue up through here, it looks like, but that has a plug on it. It's quite loose, so I'm gonna see if there's another way to remove that. This will be a lot of little screws and bolts, and we'll watch that quickly. Okay, we're seeing this bolt for the first time together here. See lots of like bubbles of rust. See like the grounding plate again, because this is the chain plate underneath it. Yeah, the chain plate doesn't seem to have the rust. It's all on the backing plate. And this side does not have a grounding wire. Don't know why. Perhaps they only do it on one shroud of each side. I don't know. I'll figure that out as we remove more. So I'm going to remove all these bolts now, and we'll get a better look at it. So this is a prime example of why no matter what I'm replacing all these bolts. I just gave this one, none of these are really tight. They're not difficult at all to get off. As soon as I put a wrench on this one, the end of the bolt just snapped right off. Now luckily on this island, we get 3/16 stainless steel. The bolts that I'll be replacing this with will probably be better than these. These aren't stamped 3/16. They're just stainless steel, so probably 308 stainless steel. 3/16 stainless steel I don't think would have corroded right through like that. But that came off very easy. I barely put any weight on it and the head broke right off. I was able to remove that last bolt. I had to remove all of these pieces of wood that were all, screwed and capped with wood plugs, like very inaccessible. Once I removed all that, I was able to pull this wood back far enough by hand while I tapped that bolt out. So that's not a great design in my opinion. Those bolts and chain plates should really be accessible. They just had to make this cabinet a 1/4 of an inch more forward and it would have come out, but it was actually behind the wood here of this faceplate, unremovable. There's also no grounding cables on this side, and I don't think I saw anything on the inside. There's no wire for it, so perhaps that is the only shroud with it, or maybe they all come down one side of the boat. But that's where we are now. I'm going to finish removing this chain plate. I have to tap out those bolts because 2 of them snapped, so really good thing I'm doing this now. This is the bolt end, this is the nut end, and a piece actually broke off in between that I had to punch out. I can't show you the small piece because once it popped out, I heard it rolling down to the bottom of the boat. So I've cleaned this up just quickly here so I can see it better, and I'm not liking the look of it. Let's see if I can show you here. There you can see those cracks. I don't know why there's vertical cracks on it. Maybe an engineer watching this can tell me why. Because this is just a front plate. This goes up against the chain plate. If this is here, then the chain plate is up against that. Then there's the bulkhead, and then there's the backing plate. So I wouldn't think this gets any strain on it, but there are definitely cracks. They're all the way up here, if you can see that, all down that right side edge. So I really think that this is just because it is inferior metal. It's just not the right kind of metal. It's in very poor condition. So I'm gonna not bother cleaning that up anymore because I believe that has to be replaced. Okay, so now that the chain plates are out and cleaned up, I'm going to clean out these pads that they rest on. Just a bunch of dried up adhesive here, feels like rubber. But I want to clean up all this old silicone because I'm going to be using butyl tape to seal this, because butyl tape doesn't dry up like this and allow water through. Alright, we're back here doing these chain plates. I received my new backing plates and what I think is a grounding plate, which goes up against the chain plate, one for each side, because I'm only going to be doing these 2x2. And what I want to do now is I put a little bit of gel coat on here just to fill in like the little cracks and chips, just so we have a nice flat surface for sealing against. So I'm just going to clean this up now. Relatively flat. This is how the chain plates go in this way. So that goes up against the wall here. What I want to do is put a little bit of anti-corrosive on here. So this is the side going up against the bulkhead. Just gonna lay it. Oh great, that was full of water. It rains here all the time. In fact, it's probably easier to apply it here, so I'm going to do both sides of this up here. Clean them up as best I can. I got put a little bit of gel coat in there just to fill in like the cracks and the chips so that I get a nice flat surface to put on the butyl tape, which is what I'm going to be using for sealing this. Gonna try this out with 2 wraps around it and then some on the surface. It's definitely filling the void. And now we can go down below and take a look. Alright, so that's the chain plate coming through. The holes are looking pretty close, and these are the new parts I had made. Hopefully they will fit. That is definitely not fitting. I don't know what it's putting away. Oh, wow, wow, wow. That has glass in it. I don't want to cut that glass, so I'm going to take the grinder and shorten the middle. Because I just trimmed a little bit of this off and chipped away a bit of the glass there. I got it up high enough that I just got the bolt to go through, but barely. It's really up against the threads. Alright, with lots of chiseling away at the filler that they put around here on both sides. So both of these were 1/8 of an inch too tall, so they're preventing me from getting the bolts lined up. But now I think that I have them. So I'm one by one just going to put some corrosive resistant ointment on the bolts and slide them in. Still a little off. Now they're just sliding right through. Now that I've forced them in the top and forced them in the bottom, the rest are nicely lined up. The bolts are actually my main concern, since 2 bolts broke. One of them broke in 2 places on one chain plate. My concern now is that this is the easiest to reach chain plate. All the other ones I do are going to be very difficult locations. Some I can't be on both sides because there's a hole. It's one side of the bolt's in one room, the other side of the bolt's in the other room. So I have a large washer on the bolt head side, which I'm not so sure it was necessary, but since my bolts are all a little bit longer than what was on there before, it worked out alright. These were really nice bolts. A470. They're very strong, and they even stamped them. Everything's, oh, these ones aren't particularly. Most of the hardware you get here in Trinidad is all stamped 316s for 316 stainless, so it's better quality stainless. Alright, now that I know these bolts fit, I made a quick trip to the store to buy more before they closed for the weekend. They didn't have enough nuts, so I'm going to be using locking nuts for the rest. Now what I gotta do is clean up these grounding wires and then install them back on that bolt. Alright, that's that side done. Too bad these speaker wires didn't go through here, but it's okay, I'll tuck them back up. That's all done down here. Let's go take a look at the top side. Alright, that is exactly what I wanted to see. A whole bunch of the tape squishing out. That's going to be a perfect seal. Honestly, I don't even know what they had these little screws for here, because this cap is not loose, it was welded on. So these screws really do nothing. I don't know if I want that added chance of a leak. So as for now, I'm not going to put those screws back in. Just going to clean up the excess here that came out. There we go, that's done. We bring our shroud back over. Well, for now I'm going to put this cotter pin in there. I'm going to get another one. This knife does not make a good hammer. We're not going to do the tuning right now, but at least it's hooked up. I'll grab another cotter pin for it, and that is it for now. I'm going to start the next one. Alright, starting on the other side now. Hopefully this goes even smoother. Alright, let's go inside. Alright, this is the other side. Now this chain plate was right inside the cabinet. This cabinet here was completely built in, but from a leaky cleat we have up there. The leaky cleat destroyed the cabinet, so we tore that out, and that's when I was revealed that the chain plate was needing to be addressed. The one bolt of the chain plate actually goes right behind this faceplate, so you actually have to pull this faceplate back to get the bolt in and out. So it's an extremely tight fit, but I was able to get it out, and now we're gonna work on putting it in. Okay, so I quickly had to start a new project in the middle of this chain plates. I removed this panel and I had the vacuum plugged in here. The vacuum actually shorted out the plug, and if you can see behind that plug, it was pretty nasty. Now, I've replaced most of the plugs in this boat, but I have not replaced this one, and you can see why I've had to replace it. Look at those wires, they're just chewed behind it. Like, I cut them off here, but that's like separation right there. The wires were just chewed in that one spot in the same length so that they shorted out on each other. But that's what breakers are for. So I cut a good chunk off. There's so many wires onto the back of that thing. I'm putting on some ring terminals. These are waterproof ones, so once I get these all clamped on, this way I'm only using one bolt on each terminal and not having to have 3 wires twisted onto a terminal like that mess was. So this is pretty simple. If you ever have to do it, just spend the money and get good shrink wrap terminals or connectors. I know there's a trick to cleaning these that my uncle taught me. I don't remember it, but it's like vinegar and baking soda and a battery or something. I don't have time for that. Got to get this put together so I can keep working on the chain plates. So I'm just getting those all nicely lined up with each other. Use the pliers to get a really good twist. Cut off some excess to make sure that they all get inside that terminal. All pressed in there. These are nice because they're clear and you can see that the wire is going inside it. I like to pinch them off pretty close to the wire end so that it really grabs hold of the copper. Give them a little tug, make sure nothing comes out, and then move on to the last color. This is plugs here are wired in series, so one connects to the other. Alright, it's going in now. Alright, moving on to the other side. It's the exact same situation. I had to chisel away the fiberglass that's right above the grounding plate, as well as on the backing plate. So every one of these have been made a little bit long. I don't know if you used thicker material or what, or measured from the wrong side of the material. We'll prepare this chain plate that I cleaned up and get it installed from above. This backing plate not being exactly the same as what I took out. The holes do not line up. I can't see where I'm missing it because it's right behind this piece of wood. Well, that was very difficult to say the least. We had to ream the hole out on the backing plate up here. I had to chisel away all the fiber, and I had to literally rip off this cabinet because I could not get access. This top bolt was just too out of alignment. We struggled with it for like an hour on that one bolt. There was no way of forcing this over because we couldn't even see where the bolt was coming through here. It was just completely behind that piece of wood. To even fit in there, you have to pull the wood back, and then once it's all the way in, just the head of the bolt fits in between the gap here. There's a gap when the cabinet ends here, right behind this. But you have, just to get the bolt in, you actually have to pull it back, and you're completely blinded. You can't see it. And we struggled and struggled. So unfortunately, I had to rip that cabinet off. We'll deal with that later. For now, we have to get these chain plates on.
That can be an on-the-go project.
An on-the-go project. Unfortunately, I already bought all the wood to build the inside of this cabinet, but I built it to the size of the opening that we had. For now, we're gonna get these chain plates on so we can get the next set off, get our standing rigging more secure. So we found so many rotten bolts and cracks in the backing plates that we can't leave it. Our forestay I inspected, and there's 4 really long bolts that go right through the bow to the outside. I have to replace those bolts. I can actually see a bit of rust coming out from behind one of the bolts, so it's a clear indication that that bolt is rusting. I'm going to be removing those bolts, but today's Saturday, nothing's open, and I want to be able to replace those bolts as soon as I take them off. Another one is on the inside of our liquor cabinet. 2 of them are on the inside of a liquor cabinet with walls there. Don't even know how we're going to access that yet. You know, we can see the very top of it, but it goes all the way down behind these books. Not all bookcases have this liquor cabinet, so I guess that's why the people who commented on the Amphitrite owners group that I made a post about this said theirs were all easy access. They don't all have the exact same cabinetry. So we had to put the first one in reverse. I like having them all with the shoulder of the bolt being this part. I like the shoulder to all be on the chain plate side, but we just couldn't do it with this. We had to put way too much force to get it in place. A boat in the yard here, workers came in and took all of their, they don't have fiberglass like this, they have a headliner, a whole bunch of weird shaped pieces of plywood with some kind of coating on it. Took them off the whole boat without labeling them.
Wow.
And apparently it was a real mess. So do you want that kind of mess on your sailboat? I didn't think so. Now we've discovered where all the wires in the boat go. Up this bulkhead. We've got all the instruments are underneath this desk here that run this boat. For the majority, all the buried instruments. But the bolts definitely look better, so hopefully we don't need a new backing plate. Yeah, these so far, these are really clean. There's barely a speck of rust on these. So this one was dry. So hopefully this chain plate is good, and the backing, hopefully everything's good, and I just replaced the bolts. I have the bolts, I'm going to replace them. Yes! Head fell off the bolt? Mm-hmm. See, these have got to be original. There's fiberglass. Over top of it, they put this on at the factory. Now the problem is the grounding wires that go through here, they went on that. There's like resin on this, so those grounding wires here weren't even making a good contact. I'm going to show you why it's important to take your chain plates out to inspect them and not just a visual inspection. One thing I'll point out now is you can't reseal them to your deck if yours come through the deck with just looking at it, and that water intrusion is what is going to damage your chain plates or your bolts. Alright, this is one of the big reasons why you want to get your bolts out. I'm going to hold a loop here so you can see it. These bolts are just full of cracks and crevices and holes. Might be hard to see with a camera, but they're very porous now. One of the bolts on this one, you know, the head just fell off. Didn't even put the wrench on that. I tapped it out from the one side and the head fell off on the other side. And that looks just the same. So even though the bolt heads are all nice and shiny, this is what's inside of your chain plates. That's what's holding that load. Just full of holes. So at the least, if you're not sure about your rigging and the chain plates look good, I would still pull them out, reseat them so that you don't get any water intrusion, and buy new bolts. Nothing but 3/16 bolts. We're using a A4 3/16 stainless, so we will not have to be worrying about that anymore. We repeated the process 3 times and replaced all but one backing plate. Also replaced every bolt and rust protected all metals before reinstalling. The whole process took roughly a week, but now we have peace of mind, especially seeing the conditions of our bolts. All the cabinets were challenging to get out, especially the galley. The galley cabinet faceplate was just completely built over one bolt. All chain plates were in good condition, just the supporting hardware was not. See you in our next episode. We're servicing the bow plate, which was even worse. The bolts were nearly falling off. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button, share, and subscribe if you haven't already done so.